Hello! Welcome back to my channel. That was a big hair flick. My hair is just all over the place today. Don't know how we're gonna film with it just being like there. Don't even have a hairband on me. Oh well. We're here, we're ready, we're filming. Let's go! Welcome! This is a very different style of video for me. I've not done one like this before, but I thought I'd just talk you through what's been going on in my reading journey lately and where I'm at with it. So yeah, it basically started the other day. I was at Run Club. I say the other day, like a month ago, maybe less than that. I was talking to this girl about books. We're having a great time. I'm running, we're chatting about books that I absolutely love. And she's talking about them and I'm like, yeah, I love these books. But I can't remember what's happened in them. Like, I remember how they made me feel. I remember like some things, but like in depth, I just couldn't remember. And some of them I'd read twice. Some of them were ACTA. I love ACTA. And I do remember more from ACTA than other books. But like, considering I've read them twice, I was like, why can't I remember more? And then I just noticed this kept cropping up. I was reading SPQR last year, at the end of last year, and then I ended up sort of accidentally taking a break over Christmas and picking it up mid-January or whatever, can't speak, picking it up mid-January or whatever, and just being like, I can't remember anything that's happened, so I'm gonna have to start it. Like, I just haven't retained anything from the first section of the book, even though I really enjoyed it. And that's frustrated me, so I started it again. And what else happened? So many things. Oh yeah, the new Wuthering Heights movie is coming out, and I read that book like 5 years ago, but still I read it and I was like, I cannot remember anything that's happened in this book. I've just started rereading it actually, which is exciting. And then I'm gonna watch the movie because it's just come out, hasn't it, the film? So exciting. And I remember enjoying the book. It was one of the first classics I ever read, I think. Maybe, definitely within the first like 4 or 5. Yeah, so that's super exciting that's coming out, but I want to remember the book and I can't. I'm having to reread it. So yeah, basically, I just realized that even though I read so much, and I try to be as active a reader as possible, I'm not retaining very much. And the one thing I will say is I do really retain how a book made me feel. Like, I can remember feelings and emotions, or probably where I read the book as well. Yeah, I might be able to tell you where I was when I was reading a book, what I was going through at that point, and why I then had more of a connection with it. But the actual story part of fiction novels and a lot of the entirety of non-fiction novels, I just can't remember. Non-fiction novels, non-fiction books. Yeah, I can't remember what's in them, and I don't like this. I actually got into such a negative spiral when this thought kept cropping up, because I love reading. It's like my personality. I literally love it so much. I talk about books all the time. I have this channel, I have my little Instagram, I write book reviews. I really push reading in my job and my career. I literally do want my career to be books. I really am passionate about like reading and what it does for the younger generation and reading education. Also, I'm a teacher. I fully understand memory. I think about every day like how to make my students remember what they need to know. And you know, I did my teacher training and a lot of that was on memory and how we get children, in my case, but you know, it's the same if you're a secondary school teacher, I guess, like teenagers, or if you're a lecturer, young adults, or anyone though, it's all the same. How do we remember things? So I've got this understanding, so why am I not remembering things myself? And then I did feel like really like quite low about it, and I felt a bit defeated, and I think it actually made me stop reading a little bit because I felt like so just flat. Then I remembered solutions, not problems. We can't just focus on what's wrong. We have to think about how to fix it. So if it is bothering me, why am I like clapping? If it is bothering me, which it is a little bit, that I can't remember as much, then I need to think of a solution and think of ways to help with this. As soon as I started looking up, you know, how can I remember more when I'm reading? Why am I not retaining stuff when I'm reading? Even like, and looking, thinking like I'm reading like for understanding, like I really do understand things I read, why am I not remembering them? I instantly felt so much better because so many people have made content, or so many people have wrote articles there's just so much out there on this topic, which made me think like, oh, it's not just me. Thank goodness, because I did feel a bit like, oh, I don't know, I think that social media, isn't it, in comparison culture? Yeah, I just felt a bit like, oh, it's just me. And then seeing that it's not just me and that a lot of people can't remember the stuff they read made me feel so much better. So that's what gave me the confidence to make this video and just be like, I can't remember anything. That is a bit dramatic, I can't remember some things, but yeah, I just thought I'd share some of the key things I learn and I'm going to try. I don't know if they work because I only read them a few months ago, like this month, not a few months ago. I only read them like throughout this month and I've started putting some of them into action, but are they working? That's the thing with memory, isn't it? It's going to be something that I can tell over time. And the other thing I did realise is I read for pleasure. I read for joy, for fun, 90% of the time. Obviously, I might read articles for work or even books for work in which I need to retain stuff in order to action it in my job. Or I might read something which I need to remember it for a certain purpose. So that I would say is different. That's like 10% of my reading. 90% of my reading is literally for fun. Even when I'm reading a history textbook or a classic, it is just for fun. It's because I enjoy it and I love reading. Whatever I do, I don't want the trying to remember things to take over the fun, because I think it's very, especially like for me, someone who enjoys studying and learning, to turn this into making all of reading about remembering. And I don't want to do that at all. I really do want this to, I guess my goal is to remember more of what I read without compromising the joy and pleasure I get from reading. Yeah. So these are some of the techniques I'm trying. Let's just go through them one by one. There's quite a few, which is a bit overwhelming, but we'll roll with it. Okay, so the first one is annotating books. I actually started doing this for classics about 2 years, 18 months ago now. Yeah, probably about 2 years ago. And I really, really, really enjoy doing this. It's such like a nice process. And my main reason for doing it wasn't actually to remember more. It was more about when I read classics, I felt like I was really struggling to understand them, particularly some. And like there are some that I still do struggle to understand now. And I then felt that I was maybe glazing over the content and missing some of the best parts of them. So I thought if I annotated them, really slowed down when I read them, especially as I know I can read quite quickly, I just found that this was a great way to make myself like, you know, be more of an active reader. I think I find it very easy to be an active reader when reading something like fantasy. But yeah, with classics, I think some of the writing is so subtle and so beautiful that sometimes I just don't appreciate it, and annotating it really helps me. So yeah, I do that already, and I have noticed that I remember more of the classics that I've annotated. For example, Wuthering Heights that I read like 5 years ago, as I said earlier, what is the story of that book? I remember some stuff. And I remember bits from reading now, more stuff has started to come back to me. But yeah, I didn't annotate it and I can remember so little. Whereas like, I'm trying to think of an example. Great Expectations I read a year ago, and I can remember a lot more because I annotated it. Obviously, it's kind of an unfair comparison because I did that's only a year ago, but still. So annotating books definitely helps me remember more. So that's one thing I can do. I will say I don't want to do that for every book that I read. Like if I am reading a fantasy novel, I don't want to annotate it, especially on my first time reading it, because they're quite fast paced and I think I don't necessarily want that slow, stick the thing in, like, you know, when you put the little tab in, and the writing experience. And if like a fantasy book does like hook me, I do write in it straight away. Like if there's something that makes me like want to react, I always like, when there's like a line that just really connect with whatever I'm reading, I feel like I have to underline it. I don't know, it just gives me some like sort of sense of like connection with the book. I remember that with Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. When I read that, I literally was underlining so much, not because I decided to annotate it, just because there was so much that I was like, oh, I just want to reread this bit again and just really like take in this writing. So yeah, I do that anyway, but I don't want to like in-depth annotate every book I read, simply because I do think it offers a very different reading experience. But I am going to continue doing that with classics, and hopefully that helps me remember more of them. And I'm going to start doing it for non-fiction books too. I've started doing it for SPQR, which is a History of Ancient Rome, SPQR, History of Ancient Rome by Mary Beard. And yeah, that is really helping me be an active reader and really helping me sort of unpick the text and get my thoughts and opinions on things. And sometimes it can be very like historical, clever book, and my reaction can be like quite, oh my goodness, that's awful. But I don't know, I'm like reacting to it. And I think actually taking a moment to engage with the text, even if it's quite like trivial, silly things that I'm saying, sometimes it's not all like that. Sometimes I do have like better thoughts than, oh no. But yes, just like recording even those thoughts that are more trivial is making me really engage with the text more. So I guess annotating to remember books that I find more challenging. That's tip 1. Oh, I'm getting a bit rambly. Let's try and be a bit more speedy with these next ones. Okay, tip number 2 I'm trying is making notes as I go. And the reason I'm trying this, like as I go, as I'm reading, like making notes as I am reading the book. The reason I've put this as a tip is I already do this a little bit, not with every book I read, but with some. But when I feel that I'm responding emotionally to a book, I will always open my notes app on my phone and write down what is making me think, what is making me feel. And I always remember how a book makes me think or feel. So I do wonder if part of the reason that I always remember that is because I am very aware of it. So maybe trying to be more aware of the plot and writing down some key plot points will help me retain the story more. And when I studied, like years ago now, oh, I'm so old, I would always have to write things down for an exam to remember them. So I'm thinking that is like the most logical way for me to try and remember things. I actually did this with The Will of the Many. Such a good book. Hopefully my review is either posted or it's going to be posted very soon. This was not the best book to start this with because writing down key plot points in a 600-page world-building fantasy novel with so many twists, it was a lot of notes, guys. And it did feel, I think it'd be dramatic to say it felt like a chore, but it did feel like a bit of a chore. When I was really tired and I was reading this book after work, I'd be like, oh, I want to go to bed. And I've just finished reading for the evening and now I've got to write the key points of what happened. It's really not that big a deal, but I think just when I felt really tired at the end of the day, I did find it like a little bit of effort, but I'm sure it's something I could get used to. Sounds so dramatic. Yeah, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to try that. Okay, so tip number 3 is I have this notebook and it's called my messy book. And it's basically, does anyone else like get worried that their notes are like really scruffy and sometimes you just put too much thought into your notes looking nice? Well, the solution to this for me was having a messy book. I think I got the idea from Ruby Granger. I love her YouTube, it's so great. Yeah, I got the idea from her of having like a notebook that is messy. Anything when you want to like dump ideas, you put it in there so it doesn't matter because it's in your messy book. Because of this, I actually think all of my notebooks are now a bit more messy because I've got more comfortable with it, but I'm digressing. Anyway, when I finish a book that I'm so excited to review, like The Will of the Many, I'm trying to think what other ones, like Signature of All Things by Elizabeth Gilbert, I was so excited to review that book because there was just so much like in it and I just felt like so much passion about all the different twists and turns. And I also knew that because that book was so content heavy, it was going to be so much harder to remember what was in the book. So I deliberately like got my messy book and just brain dumped everything I could remember about that book and what happened in the story, and thoughts, feelings, key scheme. Oh my goodness. Thoughts, feelings, and key themes. Why was that such a tongue twister? Yeah, and I just put all of my ideas in that book and all the things I can remember from the story in that book. I think I should just start doing that for most books that I read, because it can literally be less than 5 minutes, and I think it will really help me retain the key points of each book. I also think because it's in my messy book, the things that I'm writing down feel less permanent and like they matter less. So if I do write something down that's wrong or a sentence that's like I don't know, misspelt, really scruffy, doesn't make sense, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so I think that's something I'm really, really going to put the effort into doing for every book that I read. Okay, so tip number 4 is actually something I learned about in my teacher training, and I thought, oh, I learned about memory in my teacher training, I can transfer this over to myself. And that is spaced repetition. And this is basically the idea of you learn something or teach something, and then you revisit it a week later, then 3 weeks later, then 2 months later. And because you're revisiting that concept you've learned, you will retain it. I think part of my problem is that sometimes, like, I read a book and then I don't remember anything about it because I haven't thought about it that much since. And I mean, that's definitely true, because books that I like less, obviously I remember less about them, but like there are some books that I would like given 3, maybe 3.5 stars, and I can't tell you a thing about them. Even maybe like, I think I used to rate books higher, a bit easier in the past, because I had less to compare it to. And there are books that I literally can't remember at all because I haven't gone back and thought about them again or revisited them at all. So I'm not saying, because this really does run the risk of becoming very study-like, I'm not saying that I'm going to sit and like reread a book every few weeks. I'm just saying maybe I'll think about it a little bit more. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I remember like Atmosphere, I read that by Taylor Jenkins Reid, that came out last year. So again, it's quite a recent read, and it was my favourite book of 2025, but I read it, and then I think I gave myself a lot of time to process it. I deliberately avoided anyone else's thoughts and feelings on it because I was just like, I loved this so much, I cannot possibly bear to see someone say something negative about it. And then I let myself go and look at other people's reviews, and I think, you know, I left time in between that, and then more and more people, and even now if I see someone saying anything about it, I'll go and look at what they're saying. So I think I haven't intentionally like tried to remember things from that book by using spaced repetition, but I kind of have, and maybe that's why I remember so much of that story. I'm trying to think how I could actually incorporate this into my life, and maybe by doing brain dumps on a book when I first finish it, and then maybe in like a month's time, just to see how much I am remembering from that particular book. But again, is it worth it? Like, does that take the joy out of reading? But then do I want to remember more? I don't know. Balance between making things like studying and fun. I don't want it to ever feel like a chore. Reading is my happiness. I don't want to take that away. We'll see. My 5th tip actually comes from another YouTuber's video, which I highly, highly, highly recommend you watch if you are starting to think about how to remember more of what you read. It's by Daniel from Closed Stacks, and he has the video, I'll link it below. He basically says about like creating a place where you read and giving yourself uninterrupted reading time in that place. He talks about he goes to the library. It could be like even a space in your house though. And I think for me, the biggest takeaway was having that uninterrupted reading time, because so much of my reading time is done in like little chunks here and there, which, you know, I still will have to do that for some things because that is how I fit in reading into my life. Like I will read for 20 minutes before I go to work. I can't get up any earlier. It's just getting ridiculous at this point. I do read before I go to bed every night, but maybe it is like I actually don't read on a night where I have, you know, 2 gym classes after work, and then I take a night where I do an earlier gym class and have a longer set of reading time. I don't know, it's something to think about, like how can I create my life to have more uninterrupted reading time? How am I going to make my boyfriend be quiet while I'm reading a book? That's the way to create that uninterrupted reading time. That's the biggest one. That sounds mean. But he's a reader now, guys. He's a proper little reader now. He didn't read fiction like 2 years ago, and now he's just such like a fiction boy. So I guess that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to read at the same time he reads, and maybe I'll schedule us both time to read together in the evening, and then it's uninterrupted because he doesn't talk to me. though when he's reading his book, I'll be reading mine and I'll be like loving it. And I'm very much like, I'm reading just happily and I don't want to stop and talk to someone when I'm reading. I'm very focused. Whereas he's like, oh, I've just read this. How cool is this? How great is this line? Blah, blah, blah. This has just happened in my book. And I'm like, I'm reading my book. I don't want to know what's happening in yours at the moment. So maybe that'll work, maybe it won't. But yeah, that's, I think, a really, really, really good tip and such a practical, easy one to put into your life. Have more uninterrupted reading time and go to a specific place to read. Definitely check out that video because he says it all much more eloquently than I do. Then my sixth and final thing I'm going to try and do as someone who's trying to learn to read more is incorporate my reading into my journaling practice a bit more. I do journal every day. I'd say it's one of the habits I actually am very, very, very good at sticking to, and especially in the week. If I'm very good at sticking to that habit, maybe I could it's like habit stacking, isn't it? Link it into that. So maybe as part of my journaling practice, I could incorporate what I'm reading and how it's making me feel, but also like what's happening. Like, don't just write, my book is making me feel this, because I do think I do that sometimes, but like say X, Y, and Z happened in my book, it made me feel like this. Or like some things I've really enjoyed in this book have been la da 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 da. Equally, I thought I could even voice note this, because I know that's another thing. When I used to study all those years ago, I used to have conversations out loud with myself. So I could even just like get my phone out or I could just speak into the air and say some of the key things out loud that happened in my book, instead of like, if I don't want to write it down. I guess I'm linking it back to that making notes one now and the journaling, but I could just speak out loud. So maybe this is like tip 7. A little tip 7 that I've just thought of now. You could like speak out loud things that happened rather than having to write it down. Honestly, I do feel a bit overwhelmed by all of these different ways to try and remember things, because I feel like there's a lot of new habits and a lot of new things to try and build into my life. But I also feel really empowered because there's so many things I can do to try and remember more of what I read. And I guess I've now turned into this fun little experiment of what is going to work and what's going to work for me, because even though some of these things might work great for you or they have worked for other people, they might not work for me. So I guess it's just like a fun little game, and I'm gonna share it with you on YouTube. That's what I thought. I thought like if I document it as well, it will help hold me accountable, but also hopefully it will be quite useful for other people. So yeah, we'll make another video updating you how it's going. Thank you if you have got to the end of my very, very rambly video. I hope it has given you some useful ideas of how you could try to remember more. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Watch this space. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Thank you so, so much, and I'll see you in the next one.